Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to tackle Fern Hill by Dylan Thomas. A poem that's well known for its childhood memories, but it's kind of got this twist.
It's not all sunshine and roses, right?
Exactly. There's like this underlying current of regret, like realizing that time just keeps on going, whether we want it to or not.
Yeah, and it's that push and pull that makes Fern Hill so, I don't know, like captivating and honestly relatable. How can a poem be so happy and so sad at the same time?
That's a good question. That's what we're going to try to figure out today, using this YouTube video analysis as our guide, at least.
Sounds good.
Okay, so before we get all lost in the imagery of apple orchards and all those green hills, let's back up a bit.
Sure.
Who is Dylan Thomas? And maybe more importantly, like what kind of stuff in his life might have led him to write a poem like Fernhill?
Well, Dylan Thomas was a Welsh poet born way back in 1914. He's known for this really, really musical style, very lyrical. His poems they almost sing themselves right off the page.
Yeah.
And for Fernhill itself, it's actually directly from his childhood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's based on a real farm where his mother grew up, a place that he visited a lot as a kid.
Okay, so this isn't just some made-up country dreamland,
Yeah.
right? This is like a real place that had real meaning to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes you wonder how that personal connection really fuels the emotional impact of the poem.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And knowing that biographical context really helps us understand the themes that are at play here. Childhood innocence, the
Yes.
passage of time and that kind of, often brutal shift into adulthood, right?
Right.
And Fern Hill captures that feeling of, as kids, we're so blissfully unaware of time passing, and then all of a sudden adulthood hits, and that carefree state suddenly seems so, so far away.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
It's like those summer evenings that just felt like they'd go on forever.
Right.
Oh, man. Okay, but before we get too nostalgic, the video jumps right into the analysis and starts with this concept of childhood as paradise lost. What's that all about?
Well, the early stanzas of Fern Hill, they're overflowing with this vibrant imagery. You've got, apple trees, fields, this incredible sense of freedom.
Okay.
And the speaker remembering himself as a child to feel like a prince, ruling over his own little world. It's almost Eden-like.
Oh, I see. And the colors too, right? All
Like,
that green for youth, the golden light, like
yeah,
happiness.
yeah.
It's like you want to jump right into that landscape. But is there also kind of foreshadowing there too? Like all that brightness can't last forever, right?
You're picking up on something really important there. Even in those early stanzas where the tone feels light and joyful,
Yeah.
there's these hints of something darker lurking beneath the surface. Remember that line, "Time let me hail and climb golden in the heydays of his eyes."
Oh, yeah. Wait, so time is being personified here. Why is that such a big deal?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. Thomas isn't treating time as just some simple concept. He's personifying it. He's giving it power and agency. Notice how time lets the speaker enjoy his childhood.
Yeah.
It's like time is almost in control, granting this idyllic experience, but also with this unspoken understanding that it can be taken away just as easily.
Whoa, okay. So even in those happy moments, there's kind of a sense of danger, right? Like lurking just out of sight.
Exactly. And that kind of sets the stage for the poem's central conflict, right? The inevitable clash between that carefree, blissful childhood and the harsh, realities of adulthood.
Right, right. Okay, I'm starting to see how this whole extended metaphor of time, like the video calls it, how that really drives the poem's meaning.
Yeah.
But how does that actually play out as the poem goes on? When does that, joyful childhood start to fade away?
Well, there's a turning point around line 40 where the poem takes on this much, much darker, more melancholic tone. And we move away from those bright summery images and winter starts to creep in.
Okay.
And it's not just the seasons changing, it's a reflection of how the speaker's feeling, emotionally.
That's interesting. It's like how as kids we experience the world so intensely, right? Everything is so bright and vivid.
Yeah.
And then as we grow up, that vibrancy kind of fades.
Exactly. And that's what Thomas is trying to show us here. But there's another element that's even more jarring, the rooster.
Oh, right, right, yeah. The
Yeah.
the rooster crowing, like that biblical allusion to Jesus's betrayal, right? It feels almost out of place in a poem about a farm, but
But it serves a very important purpose. That rooster's crow, it's not just about a farm waking up, it symbolizes an awakening of a different kind.
hmm.
The speaker suddenly realizing that time has marched on. And that innocent, carefree period of his life, it's over. It's a harsh wake-up call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. And then, like, the regret starts to set in, right? The speaker realizes, oh, childhood is finite. It doesn't last forever. And he wants to go back, to recapture that freedom, that line, and then to wake, and the Farn forever fled from the childless land. Wow. Just, like, hits you right in the
It
chest.
really does. It speaks to that universal experience of looking back and longing for simpler times. It's not just nostalgia, it's a really deep sense of loss. But I'm curious, what stands out to you about that feeling?
Um, I think, well, that feeling of wishing you could go back,
Yeah.
even if it was just for a day,
Yeah.
to a time or a place where things felt, I don't know, less complicated, simpler.
Yeah, and that feeling is really at the heart of Fern Hill, and it's why it resonates so much with people even today, because we've all experienced that feeling, right? That bittersweet pang of realizing, you can't hold on to those carefree days forever. And Thomas, he captures that so beautifully.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground already. We've got Dylan Thomas's background, those big themes of innocence and time, and the poem's shift from this, joyful remembering to this kind of gut-wrenching realization of adulthood. But there's still so much to dig into.
Definitely. We haven't even touched on all those vivid similes and how Thomas uses language to really evoke those emotions.
Right, we're just scratching the surface.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to do in the next part of our deep dive. We'll go deeper into the language, the imagery, and really see how Thomas creates such a powerful experience for the reader.
I can't wait to get into that. We'll be back in a flash, so stay tuned for more Fernhill insights.
Welcome back. We're in the middle of our deep dive into Dylan Thomas's Fernhill, right? And last time we were talking about how it starts with this like picture perfect image of childhood, and then it takes this kind of darker turn as the speaker realizes he can't stay in that innocent world forever.
Yeah, exactly. And that got me thinking about um, all the ways that Thomas uses language to create that shift, that change in feeling and mood. The video kept mentioning extended metaphors, and I'm curious, like, what do those even mean, and how do they work in Fernhill?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the extended metaphor of time, it's like this thread that runs through the whole poem, right? And it's key to understanding what the poem is really about. You see it from the very beginning, right? With time, letting the speaker enjoy his childhood.
Right. Yeah.
But even that word "let," it suggests that this permission, it could be revoked at any time,
It's like
rather.
time is calling all the shots, like almost like it's holding the strings.
Yeah, exactly.
And that makes the joy feel a little bit fragile.
Exactly. And as the poem goes on, that feeling of time having all the power, it gets even stronger.
Yeah.
Later on, time is described as having, means and mercy, which makes it sound like this powerful being
Right.
that can grant or withhold favors like a king or something.
Okay, so it's not just this abstract concept like time is ticking, but it's almost like time is another character in the poem.
Yeah, you could definitely say that.
And that brings us to one line that really stuck with me, actually. Time took me up to the apple trees. It sounds so simple, but
But it says so much. Right. It shows us the speaker's whole relationship with time. Notice how time is the one in charge. It's the one who's doing the taking the speaker to this specific place.
Right.
It's like, again, time is dictating everything that
Right.
happens in the speaker's life, even in these seemingly carefree moments.
it's like the speaker's being swept along by a current, right? And he can't control it. And that feeling of being helpless really comes through in those later lines where the farm has fled from the childless land. It's
Yeah.
like time took it away, and there's no going back.
Yeah, yeah. It's a powerful image, right? Of loss and how childhood is something you can never really get back. And even how Thomas uses specific words to make us feel that. Like he could have just said the farm was gone or disappeared, but he says it fled, which makes it sound like it was trying to get away from something.
Like it was running away from the reality of adulthood.
Exactly, like time chased it away. And then in those last lines, when the speaker is chained by time, by adulthood, that imagery is so strong.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's such a different feeling from those earlier images of, running around free and just being full of joy.
Right. It's like the speaker isn't just sad about losing a place. He's sad about losing a whole way of being. And that's where that metaphor is so powerful. It's not just about getting older. It's about how our relationship to the world completely changes.
Okay, so we've got this extended metaphor of time as this controlling force that ultimately, um, takes away childhood. But I also feel like there's a sense of acceptance in the poem too. The speaker doesn't seem completely bitter about losing his childhood, right?
You're right. That's a good observation.
Mm.
The poem isn't just about missing innocence, it's also about recognizing how beautiful those memories are and how valuable. And that's where those really strong sensory details come in.
Right, like all those descriptions of green fields and the golden sun and the swallow-tronged lost.
Right. It's like you can practically feel that warm summer sun on your skin, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And smell the hay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by describing all of that, all those colors and sounds and feelings of his childhood so intensely, Thomas is almost letting us experience those happy moments, even as we understand that they're fleeting.
Right.
It's like he's saying, yeah, this time is gone now, but look how amazing it was. It's a celebration of those memories,
Right.
even while acknowledging that they're bittersweet. It's like a bittersweet symphony, almost.
I love that. That's a perfect way to put it. And that's one of the things that makes Fern Hill so powerful. It's not just the simple rose-tinted view of childhood. It's more than that. It recognizes both the joy and the loss. And it gives space for both of those emotions to exist at the same time.
That's true. The video also pointed out all those similes throughout the poem, remember? They were highlighted in yellow.
Oh, yeah.
It seemed like those were important too.
They are, yeah. Those similes are like these little bursts of insight, right? They add another layer of meaning and they make the poem even more complex. And they help us understand what the speaker is feeling really deeply.
Like that comparison of the speaker's feelings to the mystery of the sea.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
What do you think that means?
Well, it speaks to how big and overwhelming his experiences were, right? Those childhood emotions like the wonder, the sense of possibility, it's almost too much to contain.
Yeah, it's like overflowing.
Exactly. And then there's that image of lamb white days. Lambs often symbolize purity and innocence, so it's like those childhood days were, I don't know, full of this untainted beauty.
Oh, yeah. And those similes, even though they're short, they really make you pause and think about the comparison, which just makes the poem even more impactful. It's amazing how Thomas can convey such big ideas
Yeah.
using these small, seemingly simple comparisons.
That's what makes Fern Hill so rewarding to go back and read again and again. You
Yeah.
always find something new, like a subtle layer of meaning you might have missed the first time.
Mhm.
But even if you don't understand every little detail, the feeling of the poem, that emotional core, it still comes through.
Yeah, that longing for those lost innocent days and that bittersweet feeling of time passing, that's universal. Doesn't matter what your own Fernhill looks like. We've all felt that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes you think about how, as adults, how do we hold on to that wonder, that joy, even when life is complicated, right?
That's a great question. It's like,
Yeah.
how do we keep that little spark of childhood alive inside us,
Hmm.
even while we're dealing with all the responsibilities and sometimes the disappointments of being a grown-up?
I think Fernhill might offer some clues, actually.
Mhm.
Remember all those vivid details, those sensory experiences that Thomas uses?
Mhm.
Maybe that's part of the answer. Maybe it's about actively looking for those moments of beauty and awe, even if they look different from how they did when we were kids.
So instead of just wishing we could go back to the past,
Hmm.
we should try to find those Fernhill moments right now in the present.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
It's about remembering that even though you can't go back in time, you can still cultivate that sense of wonder and that appreciation for everything
Yeah.
around you. And maybe by doing that, you can keep a little bit of that childhood magic alive.
Okay, I like that. So we've talked about how time is this big metaphor that drives the whole poem, right?
Mm.
And that ultimately it's what leads to the speaker realizing that the childhood can't last forever. And we've seen how Thomas uses all this vivid imagery and similes and specific words to create this really strong emotional experience for the reader.
Yeah.
But there's one more thing we haven't really talked about yet, the poem's shifting tone and mood.
You're right. We've mentioned how the poem starts out light and happy and then gets darker, but it's worth looking at exactly how Thomas does that, how he creates that shift. He's a master at it.
Okay, let's do that. And then we can wrap things up by connecting it all back to the listener and talking
Yeah.
about what Fern Hill can teach us about living in the present moment. Okay, so we're back and we're wrapping up our deep dive into Dylan Thomas's Fern Hill. We've talked about all those amazing childhood memories, the how time always seems to be hanging over everything, and how the whole poem kind of shifts from happy remembering to a more uh, well, bittersweet acceptance of being an adult.
It's really amazing, isn't it, how those two different tones, like the happy and the sad, how they fit together. It's like we're We're experiencing the emotions of the speaker, right along with them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, remember the first part? How those early stanzas feel so light, almost like carefree? It's like
Yeah.
we're right there with the speaker, enjoying those warm, golden summer days.
Yeah. Yeah.